Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and give people a few minutes to jump on. So go ahead and just read the slides that are playing. Well, good evening. My name is Courtney Williams, and I am a licensed foster parent for more than 17 years and over 60 kids now in my home. I also work for America's Kids Belong to help inspire and equip others to do the same. I'm also the host of this year's FosterCon webinar series, and on behalf of America's Kids Belong, I want to welcome you to our first of the event, Fostering Primer. Thanks for joining us tonight. At America's Kids Belong, our mission is to dramatically improve the experiences and outcomes for kids in foster care. The event is part of fulfilling that mission as we work to inspire, engage, and educate folks who are considering fostering and help close the large gap between kids in foster care and the licensed foster homes available. I'd like to quickly review a few things before we get started. First, take a moment to read the slides that are scrolling. They share information on our keynote speaker and our panelists for tonight. It'd also be fun to see where everybody is from. Feel free to utilize the interactive chat and share where you are joining us from. This recording will be recorded and shared on social media and other public platforms in case you want to listen to it again or share it with other people. And thank you for the great questions. A lot of you wrote in questions ahead of time, but if not, there is a Q&A option at the bottom of your Zoom. You'll be able to see a little Q&A thing where you can write in questions throughout the night. And if there are questions that aren't answered as we get going, we will be answering questions at the very end. We will have a Q&A time. So make sure that you're writing those questions so you can get your questions answered. Also, you will get a follow-up email to have access to this event in the on-demand, along with our upcoming series that we have in the webinars. There will also be a certificate option for those of you that need some ongoing training hours, so make sure you let us know if you need that. At the conclusion of tonight's webinar, a survey will pop up, and we'd be really grateful if you would take a moment to provide your feedback so we can continue to make these events better and better. And lastly, again, look for that email with links for helpful resources, including a recording, like I had said, and also a link to our brand new podcast, the Foster Friendly Podcast. We'll have a link to that so that you can listen in and invite others to listen as well. So now, I would like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Barry Farmer. Hold on one second. Let me pause that recording. Stop the share, but I didn't stop playing in my background. Sorry about that. Barry Farmer. Barry lives in Richmond, Virginia with his 3 adopted sons. He grew up in kinship care with his grandmother from ages 5 to 18. At age 20, he became a foster father with a local therapeutic agency, and at 22, he adopted his oldest son, followed by 2 more sons. Today, as a single adoptive dad, Barry is a spokesman for Adopt US Kids, a foster care adoption advocate for children awaiting adoption. He's a speaker, a mentor, and the host of the Barry Farmer Morning Show with Sharon Lizzie. a nationally syndicated radio show based out of Richmond, Virginia, as well as the creator and administrator of one of the largest online support groups for foster and adoptive families. Thank you for joining us tonight, Barry. It is
Thank you, Courtney.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you to Virginia Kids Belong for the introduction to America's Kids Belong. We have developed a great partnership with Virginia Kids Belong, sharing the voices of the children awaiting adoption here in Virginia through my radio show. So very proud of that. Thank you for the warm introduction as well. Who am I? You know, as Courtney said, I am a radio show host. I am, most importantly, a father. You know, I kind of take that adoptive part off sometimes. But I'm a father. I have 3 boys that I love dearly, that I've been raising for the past, going on 14, 13 years now. So, but discovering foster care was totally by accident when it comes to being a foster parent. Not something I was actively looking to do, but I stumbled across this ad one day that said, become a foster parent today. And me knowing my background and how I grew up and being sort of parentless and not feeling like I belonged anywhere but where I was, I knew that if I took on that role, that I would be someone who understood what it was like to be in the position that these kids were in. And when I went forward with the process at the age of 19, going on 20, you know, I really didn't think anybody was going to take me serious at this agency. But after having a long heart-to-heart talk with the director of the agency, she decided that I was a perfect fit to be a foster parent at such a young age. Now, I wasn't really bothered by my age. I wasn't really anxious to parent. I just wanted to be someone who could be available. At that point, I was already working with children. I was 6 years into the education field. I did 16 years altogether. And, you know, I was working with more difficult behavior kids who were in group homes, who were having difficult backgrounds at home. So, you know, it was like a walk in the park for me doing therapeutic foster care. It was more so like bringing work home, but a little more laid back. And, you know, me navigating foster care and going to trainings and trying to figure out where I fit in and what my role would be, it was more of a big brother role because I was so young. I wasn't trying to really be anyone's father, but more so a mentor to keep them safe until it was time to go home. And when one day, keeping my oldest son, he got news that he wasn't going home. And all of a sudden, all those feelings rushed back to me because I know that feeling of someone telling you that, you know, your mom or your dad is not going to come back for you. You got to go live here. And I grew up in kinship care with my grandmother, Cora, and she was a complete stranger to me. I didn't know her at all. So me witnessing that all over again kind of tugged at my heartstrings. But what I wasn't prepared for was a social worker asking me, would I be interested in adopting him? And like, you must have forgot I was 21 at the time. Me? And she like, would you consider it? And I said, yes, I would. I would consider it. Because at that point, my son had made so much progress emotionally. We had bonded, totally bonded. And my family absolutely adored the kid. So there was no way we were just going to let him just walk out the door to someone else and start all over again. This was his opportunity to get what he was looking for. He knew what he was looking for. He was looking for family. Even though he was a white child, kids don't care what we look like. There's an innocence about that is not really putting up any antennas. What we provided him was stability, structure, and love. And the structure part was just very important as a foster parent, having expectations of him as a child, not as an adult, not as a kid with trauma, but as a child in general. Kind of made things more easy for him, I would think. And I know it made it easier for me when I was in his shoes, that the structure, the consistency, the love that was coming from the community. My grandmother was a single parent taking care of me, and she let the community come in and wrap their arms around me and take me places and show me different things outside of my own neighborhood, because my grandmother wasn't a traveler. She didn't drive. You know, anywhere we got to around town, we caught the bus. So her allowing other people from the community to come in and pour into me, just like my family poured into my oldest son when he first came, and then they poured into my middle sons, and then they continue to pour into my youngest son. You know, that is what our children in foster care are looking for. And that's what we're hoping tonight, if you're not a foster parent, that you will consider this opportunity to become one and have an opportunity to pour into a child. In America, we have children who are on TV, who are on YouTube, who are on Facebook, Instagram, begging for homes. And that should really hurt your heart as an American, as a human, that a child could be so lonely that they're taking a risk. They said, put all of their cards on the table for everyone to see, to have one more chance at having a home, someone they can call mom, someone they can call dad, uncle, cousin, grandma, grandpa, that whole structure. I looked at one video, a child was talking about what he wanted in a family. But the whole time you could see the despair in his face, like it's not going to happen. His head hung so low. It was, I wanted to go get, I'm retired, but I wanted to go get the kid. He was halfway across the country. I said, and I was like, why must he go through this? And when we think about our foster kids, we need to remember they're in a situation that they did not ask for. They were brought into this unwillingly and forced to deal with it day after day of rejection, of abandonment, of new normals constantly, people rotating in and out of their lives with no fault. That is not their fault. It's no fault of their own. That is what made me stay as a foster parent as long as I did, because I understood that feeling, that rotation of people, that why am I not important enough for my own father and mother to come see me, to take me somewhere, to be there for me? Why aren't you at my award shows? Why aren't you present? And I consider myself a pretty good kid. I ain't gonna lie to you. I want the best, but I was pretty good over. I was normal, whatever you want to call that. But I always told myself when I saw my friends with their moms and their dads, I was like, God, I would have made a great son, because I would have just made them so proud. And I would tell my friends, like, you're lucky, your dad is here to take you here, or your mom is showing up for you. I really don't have anyone to call like that and drop everything and run to me, because everybody else has their own responsibilities. I'm not their responsibility. And I wanted that for my sons. I wanted to be responsible for them. When they called or when they were doing something special, I wanted to be present. Football games, I'm present. Basketball games, I'm present. Awards days, I'm present. Birthdays, I'm the biggest celebrator, of course. They enjoyed all of those moments, even when they were teenagers and they act like, how teenagers are. But they knew I was coming for that. I would be the first face they see that day and the last face they see at night. And that is what made me feel more of an accomplished father, not just an adoptive father, but a father in general, to just be there for my boys, to walk with them through those milestones and to just love on them. And I would watch them at times when at night I'm walking through the house and everybody's asleep. I'll look in their doors and I'm like, who wouldn't want to see this face? Who would walk away from these faces like this? Who wouldn't want to be a part of this? And I know at times when you're on America's Kids Belong or whatever your state is, and you see the adoption photos and you look at those kids and you're like, Who wouldn't want to be a part of that? Who would be able to walk away from this space and not be there? And that means you have a heart for humans. You have compassion for what they're going through, and you want to act on it. But some people are afraid to act on it because of the stereotypes of what a foster kid is. And what I want to say to those stereotypes is they're children. Even if you have them biologically, guess what? They're still unpredictable. You don't know what's about to happen. So, and that's how I thought about my kids. I'm like, this could have been my flesh and blood, still going through the same thing. They still could have been bipolar. They still could have been have ODD, all of the above, and it wouldn't have had nothing to do with anything. It just could have happened chemically, and I'm just gonna walk away. I can't do that. And that's what we need to think about when we think about our foster kids. When they come into your home and they have been let down so many times and they're testing you and testing your loyalty and pushing back, you got to push back and say, well, look, this is it. And that's one of my sons. I had to literally say that to him often for a couple of years when he would get in trouble and he would think that it's time for him to pack up and go. I would get on him, and then before I leave his room, I'm like, and you're still not going nowhere. And he'll look, and he's 21 now. He still remembers me saying that. He's like, you remember when you used to tell me I wasn't going anywhere? I think about it now, I was like, this guy is crazy. All that stuff I did. I'm like, no, you're not going anywhere. I know what you're trying to do. I'm going to pass the test. There is not a test you will put in front of me that I will not fail as a parent. You are not going anywhere. And I think when we think about our foster children and how they are hurting, and us as foster parents, we tend to almost take everything personally. But what you need to remember is it really has nothing to do with you. It didn't start with you. It started long before you came along. You're just another person added into the mix of the chaos that they did not even create.
Great reminder.
So that part of it and fostering, you will always have to remember as a foster parent, even when you decide to adopt and they're yours forever, they could have very well been your flesh and blood. Get them some help. There were some things I didn't understand about trauma until I dug deeper into my own trauma. I'm like, well, I know what that is. I know what this means. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go this route. Let's try this. And it will work. Oh, let's try this type of therapy. No sit down therapy. Let's do play therapy. They're children. They don't want to sit down on the couch. They need to play it out. It worked. I drive about 45 minutes across town to the pediatrician for my son because I feel like he's the best. I want my kids to have the best. So we got to wake up early and we got to make that trip across town for this 10-minute visit. and he knows my kids. And he makes sure we are taking care of them together. Because I've had some pediatricians, they're like, oh, I'm like, no, not my kids. I got to find someone who's on the same lines as me about what is best for my kids. I was willing to go the distance for my boys in every way. Every way. One of my sons is from Pennsylvania. And I knew the day I met him that he wanted this family and he wanted it right now. I could tell by the way he talked. And when I got in my car, I made a decision. He belongs here. And he was 8 hours away. It was an 8-hour drive up and an 8-hour drive back for a 2-hour visit. And I did it every 2 weeks for 6 months. I wanted him to know that someone was committed to him. And when I was driving back, when I got home, I called him. I called him every day after school, talked to him after school, called him back a few hours later before bed. He felt bad one day. Everybody was getting mail but him. I wrote him a letter. I sent him packages. Even though I was going to talk to him that day, I just wanted him, whatever he needed to feel like not to feel out of place, I was willing to do that for him.
Wow.
And that is a parent move. When your kids are away, you worry. You want to know what they're doing. And I know I was his father because I would worry, what is going on up there with this kid? What is he doing? And that's why I know every child that has come through my home, I'm like, there has got to be a connection of somebody cares. Whether you stay or you go, someone cares.
Thank you so much for sharing, Barry. You are an inspiration, and it is a myth. A lot of people think that you can't foster as a single parent, and you're showing us otherwise. So thanks for sharing your story and just reminding us, our heart is, we want kids to feel that they belong. And that's what I hear from your story is that belonging that kids need to feel and not just be told, they need to feel that in our homes.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Thank you again for joining us tonight. And we'll hear more from Barry as we continue here. But we are going to transition now into our panel, where we're going to ask some of the most pressing questions around foster care. And so tonight, along with Barry, we're delighted to welcome Andrea Young and Lacey Paredes. Both of them are foster parents, Andrea in Georgia and Lacey in Kansas. So welcome to our panel, Andrea and Lacey. Let's go ahead and get started. Lacey, first question is for you. What is the purpose of foster care?
Okay. Foster care is intended to be a temporary arrangement, but it's court ordered and monitored, where trained caregivers, where it's either, which includes kinship or relatives, take care of kids when their bio family cannot at the moment. So the primary purpose and goal and hope is for the kids to return home, and the goal is reintegration or reinterview. How come I can't say that?
Reunification.
You say it for me, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. And we will do a deeper dive on an upcoming webinar on fostering permanency, what it looks like when kids can't return home. But like you said, like Lacey said, it is the goal of every kid when they enter foster care. The primary goal is reunification. So Lacey and Barry, can you guys both have adopted as well? Can you talk to us a little bit about what it looks like to be for reunification, but also supportive of adoption when that doesn't happen? We really say we want families that are open and willing to both, right? We want to be that pro reunification, be that biggest advocate for the family members, but sometimes that doesn't happen. So Barry, can you speak into that a bit of how you can be both?
So here's the thing. You absolutely need to be both. And I know people tell you not to get attached or it's, not to get so bonded with the kids. It's impossible. So you can get that out of your head. You're going to get attached. That's just the way it is. But what you also have to understand is that a family can be healed if the opportunity presents itself. And you want that child to be where they know they belonged first. Okay? And belonging there first means that someone has actually put in the work to bring them back into the fold in a safe environment. Now, does that always work out? No. But you are a resource, and you need to remain a resource for the kids and the families that they go back to. I've seen it many times where they are reunified and then something goes wrong. But the thing is, when they are reunified, someone put in the work. We need to respect the work that they put into, because that love goes into that work of bringing their child back home. It's hard to bring your child back home. It's hard to watch them go at times for some parents. So the parents stepping in to do the work and bring their child back home, even though it's hard for us as foster parents to let go, and we put so much time and energy and love into these kids, and someone once again comes and takes them out of your home. They show up unexpectedly, but as they can leave unexpectedly too, and you need to be prepared for that as a foster parent. And know your role as a foster parent is to be the resource first. So you're going to get attached, but remember that you're the resource.
Great. Lacey, anything to add to that, or what that looks like for you?
Yeah, we just got into foster care to be a safe place for kids, and we wanted to be an ally to the biological parents, right? And we committed to however long was needed, and sometimes it's forever. I mean, we didn't set out to adopt. We were very comfortable in the fostering role, but when the time came, that's what was needed, and that's what we did. I think, I just think it's so important to just to forge the relationships with the family, just to be in their corner, and it's hard. It's messier than I prefer. Um, and it takes kind of fortitude and a finesse, but I think it's very important, and we can honor their story before they came to our home and the story after they came to our home.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit, thinking of those bio parents who are often putting in time, and sometimes they have setbacks, and then they put in more time, and it's kind of the up and down, but they really need people to come alongside them. When we see them at visits, when we see them in the public, to give them a hug, give them a smile. I had a biological mom tell me one time, she said, I trusted you from the first time I met you. And I was, to be honest, I had some hard feelings towards her at first, and sometimes those are real feelings, but I still wanted to respect her and show her empathy. And so I kind of asked her, I said, well, what made you trust me? And she said, you looked me in the eye when a lot of people were giving me the glares. A lot of people, meeting caseworkers or other people would kind of look at her like, how dare you do this to get your kids into care? So that's what they need. They just need that empathy and compassion as well for those family members. So thanks for sharing. Andrea, tell us a little bit about the licensing process and what does that look like? What does it entail to become licensed as a foster home?
So it's going to look different in every state. So I'm not going to talk about, I'm in Georgia, but it's the first thing you have to do is make an initial phone call. So it's going to be you have two choices, and that's the same across America. You can either go straight to your state and just call DFACS, or you can also call a private agency. And that's really just dependent on kind of maybe your personality. Even for us, I'd been a public school teacher. So I was like, I'm going to go straight to DFACS. So we chose to go straight to DFACS, and then, or you could go to a private agency. Some people just really want like some private agencies only place sibling groups, or some do just older kids. You can call around and ask, about the private agencies, but initially you're going to sign up with one or the other, and then you would start most all of them have an orientation. So they're going to just want to fill you out to make sure kind of give you a broad view, it's actually a lot like this, where you're going to just hear about foster care. And then after that, you'll sign up for classes. I think across the board, there's always two options for your classes. They can do them on Saturdays, and sometimes they're at night, just so more people can do those. I haven't heard of any of them that are really during the day because of working. But we did ours during the week, and a lot of places even have them where you can do them like Zoom or online. And that's what we did. That was one reason I think we even thought about going with who we went with at the time, just because we needed to do the classes at night because we have kids online. So you initially make that orientation call, then your classes, and then after it's a few weeks of classes, maybe a month. And it might vary depending on what you do, but then you do the home study. And that's a big word that some people might be scared of, but it's really, it's not a lot. It's, going to the doctors for checkup. There's a list of things, and I just print off the list and check them off, maybe fingerprints. Oh, for sure, fingerprints, but the background checks and doctor's appointments. And then really, like 3 to 4 caseworker visits. And it's basically a walkthrough of your home. You have things that you need to safety checks of your home. And then interviews for you and your husband. And if you have kids, they'll come and interview your kids, and just make sure that they are on board too, because they're going to be a part of fostering with you. So that's kind of a general overview, but it's really not as overwhelming as it might sound. And you know, the timeline can just vary. We got through ours in a few months. So
yeah, thanks for sharing. Speaking of that home study and kind of your home, Lacey, can you touch on the physical space a bit? I get a lot of questions from people asking, like, do you need to own a house? Do the kids have to have their own room? Can we have pets in our house? Like, what are some of those things look like as far as the home goes?
Yeah, so those are good questions. Like Andrea says, the rules and regulations vary by state. But I'm not an adoption professional, but as a foster mom, it's my understanding that there's no age restrictions. You just need to be 21. You don't have to own your own home. You can rent. As far as the rooms go, it's mostly about advocate space and each child having their own room. And there's guidelines to like age mates and genders. You don't have to be married. You don't have to be a parent before. You don't have to have children of your own. You can have pets. You can work a full-time job. You don't have to be a stay-at-home parent. There's help with childcare. And I think the last thing I kind of want to throw out there is, unlike private adoptions, there's little to no cost to adopting through foster care. And I don't think that's something people are aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people want to know, like I said, a lot of people like those questions answered of what does my house have to look like? And as Andrew said, even that home study, it doesn't need to be, they're not coming to see if your home is pristine and not going to look in your closets and make sure everything's folded neatly and things like that. People get very worked up over home studies, but really they just want to know that, do you have a safe environment? And there are certain things they might need to, I know different states have different things, like you might have to have your knives locked up if you take a certain age group, or if you have a trampoline, we have to have a net on it, or certain things like that. But it's nothing that's absurd or, way out there. It is just things really to see that the home is safe. Andrea, what would you say that it takes to foster?
I came up, I was thinking about this and came up with, well, I could say a million things, but I'm just going to say three. The first thing is kind of just where it starts for everybody, where it started for you guys too. It's just your heart for kids. And this is going to be what takes you back. I always call it my why, the reason why. And for us, I actually, my why was, we volunteered with Georgia Kids Belong, and I was helping and connected with this little kid. He was a little boy, and we knew that he needed a family, and we quickly got through it, and he was our why. But by the time we got through, he had found a family, which is amazing. But just even looking at the numbers, I knew that there were hundreds and thousands more like him. So for us, he was our why, and the kids were our why. So first, a heart and compassion for kids in hard places, I would say, is the first thing. And then the second, really, that's kind of like the big lovey-dovey part. But the second is really understanding, like just that, taking that pause at why these kids are here and why, how they got here, and compassion that, like Barry said earlier, these kids didn't ask to be in hard circumstances, and just always pausing and thinking through. And that goes back, just that constant pause when you have kids in your home, like when there's a meltdown, not immediately even thinking about the spilled milk, but instead, why are they crying over the spilled milk, and what might have happened before when they spilled milk, or just even processing why maybe a simple reaction may need to come or be approached differently. And then just compassion and willingness to really learn and think about like trauma training. You'll do some of that trauma training like when you go through foster care, but it's really just skims the surface. But just that really wanting to have understanding to even dig deeper and what kids really need, because I know you all have had so many kids in your home, and there's no trauma that's the same. There's no child that's the same. So you just have to constantly be willing to pause and be compassionate for that child. And then the third thing that I think that is so important is having a support network. And that is, and it might, and if you're watching this and you are even thinking, I don't have a support network, I don't know who would surround me. I just want to encourage you that there are so many, like, there's so many like places that there are, whether it's churches or ministries, or even like reach out to whoever is over your state's, America Kids Belong, and ask them, and just and get connected, because there's so much support out there. And what's crazy is the people who ended up being our biggest support, and I wonder if this is the same for you, Lacey, Barry, and Courtney, but the people who ended up being our biggest support network, we didn't even know before we started fostering, which is crazy to me now. But it was through just a local ministry at a church we didn't even go to that had a great, big, huge network that we got connected to. And they were looking, because there were not as many foster families. So they were looking for foster families to serve. And we're all about a meal, and so all of a sudden we had this just great support network. So having some kind of support network, and even walking beside other foster parents is huge. So it doesn't, so some of the things that you might feel like you need, you might feel like you don't have now, but get connected, and I promise there's a lot out there. So.
Okay, quick little poll from the three of you, just with a shake or nod of the head. True or false? All they need is love. No, and that's what I like. What I heard from you, Andrea, is everything that we do is rooted in love, right? It's rooted in that love and the compassion we have. But it's naive to go into this thinking, oh, I just need to have love and just welcome them to my home, and it's just going to be great, right? So yeah, you spoke on some really great things that we really need to consider. And also, if you're listening to this, we also have some resources on our blog, and one of the blog posts does have some questions to consider before you open up your home to fostering, and questions to talk through your kids with and your husband with if you're married, and just really good questions to stop and consider. Of course, we want to recruit more people, but we also want people that are going to be in this for the long haul, or willing to sustain when some of the hard stuff comes. So thanks for sharing, Andrea. Lacey, what does a typical week schedule look like regarding foster care? So somebody's interested in this, but it's like, I don't know if I've got the time. What does it take time-wise? What does that look like?
I think I was surprised by how many appointments there are. A typical week looks like for us we have, our level of care is intensive 2. So we're doing a medically fragile infant. And so we have like 2, 3, 4 appointments a week, right? Like it could be therapy, it could be doctor's appointments, it could be parent visits, it could be worker visits, right? Like, so there is a lot of juggling in this foster care life. I think my advice is try to streamline it and combine as many appointments as possible, right? Like if your worker needs to come and the agency worker or the child's worker needs to come, hey, they can come at the same time. I mean, it's even better, right? Like same with communication. If you're talking to one of the workers, you CC them all, and just try to manage it that way. There's lots of appointments, lots of communication and documentation. I think you have to kind of get good at asking for help. That was really, really hard for me in the beginning. I was raised that even if you wanted help and you needed something and you asked for it, that you were supposed to like say no 3 times, like, I don't know. And so it was a struggle for me to, ask and receive help. But we need it, right? Like Andrea was saying, join a church, find a foster and adoption ministry, join a foster support group or adoption support group, invite people, into your inner circle. I think people, and take people up on their offer to help. I had, so we have 4 biological children, and so we accepted a sibling set of 3. So we had 4 in the morning and we had 7 kids in the evening. And it took a shuffle, right? It took the room shuffle and all these things. And my sweet neighbor said, hey, I know you got some extra kids. Just go ahead and put your hampers full of towels and bedding out on your porch, and I will come by and I will wash it and fold it. And I thought about, no, I'm good. Like, it's okay. I got it. But I did it, and she and was blessed by it, right? Like, now I probably wouldn't have thought of having that be a request, but that she thought of it and she took the initiative, and I accepted. So.
Thank you. Yeah. And thinking of foster care in general, you kind of touched on it. There are different levels of foster care, so there's general foster care, there's treatment foster care, there's therapeutic foster care, and there's even respite care, which is like starting, I'm not saying the easiest, but like kind of just getting your toes wet a little bit and seeing what is this thing all about. And respite care is more of that short-term care. So there are the other options as well. Lacey, sounds like they might call it differently in different states, but ours with like what you're doing is like treatment foster care. Our family is a therapeutic foster home. We used to be general, now we're therapeutic. So we take kiddos that maybe just stepped out of residential treatment or possibly going into residential treatment. And then as you kind of take on harder to place kiddos, you do have usually more appointments, kind of like Lacey was saying too. But it is one thing to be mindful of, that there are appointments as foster parents. You will be responsible for getting them to and from. There is help. It's not always, you'll have to either take them or find the help to get them there.
Right.
It's just, yeah, I get responsible for people to think about if they have the time in their schedule, or if they have the help that they can reach out to, but lean on those people. I've heard 2 of you say that now, really lean on those people. And there are so many people that do want to help foster families. It makes a big difference. Lisa, what are some of the most pressing needs in foster care right now?
I mean, we need more homes. I mean, I think in most places in the US, we have half as many homes as kids in care, right? And so we need more people saying yes. I think what's unique about foster care, like Courtney was saying, is that you can kind of choose your level of commitment. And then you could level up, right? Like you can start in one area and, end up in a whole different category, right? And we should evaluate our parameters and our reasons and our abilities and our, capacity. So you could do emergency care short term. So that's for a few days. You can do respite care and provide, relief for another foster family. It's so important. That could be like a week or so. You can do long-term care for months, sometimes years, right? You can do forever through adoption. And I think, there is a pressing need for therapeutic homes. And that just means that it's a form of foster care that's providing support for emotional or behavioral or mental health needs. It does require additional training, things like that. And then just not forgetting that there's a huge need for families willing to take teens, families willing to take special needs, families willing to take larger sibling sets. I think our tagline is that, not everyone should foster and adopt, but I really believe that more could, and we need them, and we're not to a place that there's more than enough. And so if it's, tugging on your heart, lean in.
Yeah. I hear 2 reservations from people all the time. That the 2 most pressing things that I hear are, what if I get too attached? And what about my biological children?
Yes.
So Barry, you already said it, but I even want you to say it again, because I think people need to hear this. How do you respond to the question, what if I get too attached?
Well, like I said before, you're going to get attached. It's perfectly normal as a foster parent to get attached to your placements. You put a lot of time and hard work and long nights and taking care of them, and then they just one day walk out the door with all this stuff. So, it's perfectly fine to be attached. I think it's normal to attached to things that you love. But you also have to be happy that this child was able to be reunified with their biological family, whether it be a kinship placement or whether it be with their biological parents. You just remember that you are a resource. That's what you signed up to be. That's what you should be first. If something permanent comes along, then hey, you still have to remember that there are feelings involved in that permanency as well that you will have to get over. So, remember to be a resource first. And it's perfectly okay to be attached.
Yeah. I think about, we often kind of put ourselves again, like we want kids to behave a certain way, or we don't want to get attached. But if you stop and think about their thoughts, their emotions, what they're going through, it's like if they can go through what they have to go through, we can go through getting too attached and having to say goodbye. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's not easy, but we can handle it. They can
Because I
handle
feel like they have handled a lot more goodbyes than us in a short period of time, if you think about it. So, it may not seem as big of a deal to them, but it does impact them to say goodbye to you as well. But they also, first and foremost, always want to be with their family, biological family, I should say.
And Andrea, how would you answer the question? Or if somebody said they were worried about biological kids, what would you say?
Worried about their biological kids.
Yeah.
I hear that. So that's probably one of the things that I hear the most is that, and because we have a lot of kids, people will always come and ask me that. And I always do things is one, I always say, what would make you comfortable? You don't have to start where it's hard, but maybe instead of saying, instead just ask yourself, what situation would I be comfortable with foster care? And you don't have to jump, you don't have to jump straight in therapeutic care, sibling group of a bunch of teenagers. You don't have to start there, but where might you, if you feel that heart tug and you are letting something block, in that voice of like, oh, what about my kids? What about this? There's always going to be what ifs, but instead maybe ask the question, what would make me comfortable? And it's okay to say, you know what? I think I want to start with respite and only one and 0 to 3. That's fine. If that's where you're comfortable, start there. But if you feel that tug, just start somewhere. And then maybe for us, I said this, I kind of kept it under our youngest child. And then we got a call for 2. And you get to say yes or no. You get the call. You get to, you can say no. And initially it was just a respite for 2 because I thought we have 6 kids. There's no way we could take 2. And we brought in these 2 kids and it was just going to be 1 or 2 nights and they stayed for a long time. And it was incredible. Our kids are still talking about that years later, how much fun that was having too many at once and it was great. So I would just say start somewhere. And where are you comfortable? And then, the other thing I want to say is don't underestimate your kids. Oh, that'll make me cry. Sorry. But don't underestimate what your kids, their ability to do hard things with you. Don't underestimate the kids in your home. You've raised them. You've raised them big and well with so much love. Don't underestimate that they can do hard things with you and that they can love kids where they are. And you know what the best thing is? Sorry, I don't mean to cry, but the best thing is the coolest thing, my favorite part is when that car comes down the driveway. I need my kids. Because do you know what keeps that kid that's scared to death to get out of that car is a bunch of crazy kids jumping around the car saying, we can't, come on. And we do this crazy thing. We have this inflatable jumpy. We inflate the jumpy like when we know they're on their way. Our kids are all jumping in it. We bring out the popcorn. We bring out everything. We stay up late that first night and it is crazy. And like, it's not like this every night, but we just have this big fun night together. when a kid first comes to us, just to make, and I couldn't do that without my kids. And it's just so cool too, like hearing my big kids now in college, you know, you have those nights where it's almost, you know, you're sitting around talking and they're telling stories and we're all cracking up and laughing because y'all all know those first week or two, you get some stories. But hearing them tell the stories and seeing your kids look back at photos and tear up. And, you know, we had a nonverbal kiddo once who now can talk. And my college kid getting the phone call of this little girl singing her happy birthday from her house. And my daughter calls me squealing, telling me, and I'm just like, we could have missed this, you know? And so don't underestimate what can happen in your biological kids' lives, or the kids already in your home, however they came to you, because that has been like what keeps us in it, because our kids now are like, when are we gonna, you know, have another placement? And I'm like, guys, we're on hold just for a little bit. We got to get these other kids off to college. But it's really been cool, because I have a confession. That was one of my biggest hangups for a long time, was because we had adopted kids and biological kids. And I was worried how it might stir up some things with our adopted kids, or even, you know, just we were all good. And I was worried about rocking the boat, and man, am I ever that we rocked the boat, because it made us closer as a family. Sorry, I'm like tearing up, but, it made us closer as a family. But what, you know, the stories that my kids share, and now I'm a Mimi to my kids who have gone back, and they come every Tuesday to play. And so it's just so amazing that to think we could have missed this. So that was kind of a long-winded answer on biological kids, but, and, you know, it's so cool now, because even they've been talking about that when they grow up, they want to foster and adopt. And I'm like, it's surprising, but in such a great way.
All of that. I could echo 100% what you just said. I mean, when people ask me, when did we start fostering? Technically, we got licensed 17 years ago, right after our first child was born. And then we got scared. We went through the whole process and we got scared it was going to ruin him. So we didn't take a placement. We started doing a little bit of respite, but we didn't take our first placement until after child 2 and 3 came along. And then we just really kept having that tugging on our heart. And yeah, again, I echo everything you said. It has changed our kids' lives. It has shaped them into better people. You know, and I'm not telling you there's not a magic age, start when they're this age, or they've got to be younger or older, because we've done it all. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work so well. But again, like, just really stop and think, what could your family do? And start small, like Andrew said, start somewhere, and it can grow from there. It doesn't have to be starting off, you know, with a year-long placement of a teenager. It could be anything to start. And we had our kids, we moved to Colorado 6 years ago, and we thought we were done fostering. My husband and I thought, okay, we've done enough of that. But our kids, they had a different story. Our daughter, she was in 6th grade at the time, and she got all of her siblings to write a letter to us and sign off saying, hey, Mom, Dad, you said this is a calling on our life. Does that calling just go away? And it was kind of like oh, does that go away? And so we did consider it and stop and rethink. And again, we got relicensed, and here we've been. So, but our kids do the same thing. They keep asking. They ask all the time. You know, if a placement leaves, when's the next kiddo coming to stay with us? And they are the biggest advocate. They are the ones that make kids feel welcome on that first night, those first weeks. They break those barriers, because kids can do that differently than we can. Mm-hmm. Okay, as we close out this panel time, I'd love to hear from each of you, and I want you guys to share what are some of the hardest things about fostering, but also what keeps you going, or what kept you going. So Barry, let's start with you. What's the hardest thing, and what kept you going?
I think for me, when I was fostering, the hardest thing is, you know, waiting for the honeymoon to be over so we can just really get down to business and get to what we need to get to in order for the child to emotionally move forward. Because the honeymoon period is everything is great. I'm listening, I'm doing everything I'm saying. Then one day they'll wake up and be like, all right, honeymoon over, let's do it. And I'm like, well, can you do that on the first day? And you can just keep it moving. What kept me going is seeing the kids interact with my family, my extended family outside the home, which we all understand foster care. My siblings were in foster care as well. So, it was a more of an understanding of who my kids were and what they were going through. I remember my first placement was a 16-year-old fresh off the group home steps. I brought him home on his 16th birthday, and he stayed in his room hiding from my family. And my family was like, well, wait a minute, where is he? And I was like, well, he's in his room. I guess he's kind of shy. And they, well, he's in the wrong family because we're going. And they went in there and got him. And they brought him to the dining room and they set him in a chair. They lit a birthday cake and they sung happy birthday to him. And they really like releasing him right at that wall came down really quickly because he was like, nobody's, these people are nuts. Why are they, why are they loving on me like this? Right now, this is the first day I met them. But, we all wanted to celebrate him because we knew he hadn't had that type of celebration in quite a while. So celebrating him in that way, which he has since passed away, but I knew that things like that meant a lot to him. He did, love moments like that. So seeing my family embrace my kids and welcome them with open arms, no hangups, kept me going. I was like, I can practically bring home any kid, and everybody's gonna wrap their arms around them and keep them, safe.
Lacey, how about you? Hardest thing and what keeps you going?
I think the hardest thing is balancing the contradictions of foster care and adoption, right? Like you're living in the land of both and that's uncomfortable, right? Like it's both beautiful and broken. It's good and hard. It's fun and chaotic, right? There's a joy and there's loss. It's both. You can have hope, but there's uncertainty, and so just like wrestling with that. And I think it can be hard on the people that love you. Seeing that you've signed up for such a hard journey. They sometimes don't understand and wonder if you should just tap out or if there's an easier route. And I think that's kind of the hard part for me is just balancing that, being brave enough to love fiercely and loosely. And there's just like contradictions. It's not natural. And then I think what keeps us going is the kids that come into our home and the kids that are already in our home. And like the other mamas have already said, they're just so brave. I don't think we could be an effective foster care provider without our kids. The way they love and accept, it's humbling. And when we want to stop and we think it's too much, I don't know, they just don't have the reservation and they're not near as concerned about preserving their heart. They're all in. I kind of joke that we did kind of a belly flop into foster care. We just like jumped in the deep end and it stung and it didn't look pretty. But our kids, they do cannonballs. I mean, like they're excited and they're ready and they're it's inspiring. I don't know how. So I think, and then just my conviction and our faith in God, and that, we're not special, we're not super, we're not saints, right? Like, we're just regular people, trying to make a difference in the season that we're in and with the resources that we got. So I think those are the things I would say.
Andrea.
I think hands down, the hardest thing about foster care is the first 10 days. It's like maybe 2 weeks. It's not quite 2 weeks, but it's those first 10 days. And I remember one of our hardest placements, I called another foster mom and I was like, I feel like I'm in a tornado. And she was like, oh, it's the 10-day tornado. And I'm like, what? And she was like, no, it always is hard at first. And it's just those initial, like, a child is scared, and there's gotta do all these appointments and find the doctor and all, and it just feels initially overwhelming. So if that first placement you get, for some of you who do decide to foster, don't give up. Immediately some people, I think, panic because they're like, oh my gosh, this is so hard, I didn't. But just know that right at first, it will probably feel a little bit like a tornado because you didn't bring home a newborn, you brought home a 10-year-old sometimes. And it's going to take a hot minute to figure out school, doctors, friends, what you, in 10 days, you're not going to even know what trauma they had altogether, and it's just bits and pieces you get. So just give yourself a lot of grace and give them a lot of grace, because that 10-day tornado, I can promise you, it does start to just fizzle out. And then you feel like, okay, wait, just one thing at a time. You get one thing under control and you figure out a new routine, your new normal. And then at 2 weeks, you're like, oh my gosh, that 2 weeks just flew by. We're starting to get the hang of it. So hands down, that's the hardest thing anytime you get a new placement initially, besides letting them go at the end. That to me is really the hardest. And then what really keeps me going is thinking about my why, thinking about that one, just that first kiddo at that Georgia Kids Belong time where, he told me, he was like, really all I want is a dad to throw a football with. And we can't do a lot, but I can throw a football kind of, my husband for sure can, my boys can too. And I just think back to that a lot of these kids, they don't, their asks are so simple. It's somebody to throw a football with. It's family. It's just normal day-to-day stuff that sure, you may think they say Disneyland or whatever, but really and truly, when you ask these kids what they really want, it's always just somebody to throw a football with or somebody to hang out with. And man, that's humbling and hard to hear, because you might not feel like you can give these kids the world, but you can, to them, that is the world, is just to have somebody to hang out with. So that's all I got.
Yeah, I'll just add my why in a sense at the end. What keeps us going is our foster son's birthday on Sunday. It's his 14th birthday, and he's never had a birthday party ever before. And he just looked at me and said, all I want is a birthday party. I'm turning 14 and I want to act like I'm a little kid again, having a kid friends over and have a cake and ice cream and all the stuff. So we're giving him a cake and ice cream and all the stuff. It's like, if that's what I can provide, that simple thing that shows the kid, what they missed, but yet we can still provide it and we can catch up. Sometimes we are playing catch up for many years, or a lot of hurt or a lot of trauma. And that's what they need. It's not it's not a huge house. It's not fancy gifts. It's a birthday cake. It's the little things. Okay, we're about to switch into our question and answer time. Thank you guys for sharing so far, and we'll get some more answers from you guys. I just want to remind those of you that are listening that you can still submit questions. So go ahead and use that Q&A portion on Zoom and ask some questions. Before we hop into that, Barry, share with us how people can find you. How can people find you on socials, on the web, or even watch your morning show?
Well, I'm on Monday through Friday on various stations across the country. If you want to listen live, just go to barryfarmer.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at I am Barry Farmer.
Awesome. Thanks, Barry. Okay, a couple of questions here. One of them is, what kind of trauma-informed training would you suggest before beginning foster care? So any of you guys can share what kind of training, if they don't provide it, what would you say, or how would somebody find that kind of training? Do you guys have any books that you've read that you feel like are go-to books for understanding more about trauma or kids going through hard things?
Oh, you go ahead, Barry.
No, you go ahead, because
Okay. I love the resource. Empowered to Connect has a great a website full of resources. They have some extensive training and then some basic training, but even just going back to, they have a ton of videos that for trauma training. So, I mean, you don't have to go out and get any extensive training, but they do offer it there. So, and I'm going blank on even all the different trainings for trauma, but I'll think of in a minute if Barry wants or somebody else wants to chime in, and it's going to hit me in a moment. My mom brain just kicked in.
Yeah, I tell people to just Google TBRI.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
Trust-based relational intervention and empowered to connect, and any of those share resources on that. But it really is, there's free YouTube videos. There are some good books. I love the two books. One's called The Connected Child and one's called The Connected Parent. They really do use TBRI principles of just showing you what's like to do this in your home. And another really good one that's maybe about 5 years old now is called What Happened to You. And it's really that
so good.
Like looking at what's wrong with this child to thinking, wow, what happened to this kid and how can I best support them? And just keep in mind what they've gone through. Because it's easy to get into that mindset of, oh, they're out to get me, or they're hurting me, or they're ruining my home, or, but really, if we look at it with a different lens, that's when we're really going to see change in our homes.
I also think making yourself aware of different behavioral signs or mental illness signs, things like that, such as like autism and things like that, making yourself familiar with characteristics of those that will probably help you along as well to help navigate what may be a solution to certain things that maybe you may be experiencing. I used to do behavior counseling for a few years for the emotionally disturbed children, and there were a few who were going under the radar because not everybody understood the characteristics of certain behaviors until I come in and I say, yeah, that's autism, that's Asperger's. You might want to go get them some help right now. And, I was so enthralled in the whole world of it that I could spot it from a mile away. And I'm like, okay, y'all are not servicing this child correctly. You might want to do certain things. You might want to take a different route to solving this issue. So making yourself real familiar with those certain areas as well would probably be helpful.
Another question asks, do you take breaks after a long placement has left your home?
I do. We're on one right now. So and there's no timetable. It's basically when everybody is all back in. Like right now, half of my family is, and the other, some are still like, I need a few more weeks because we got really attached to our last kiddo we had for 14 months. So we're still on a bit of a hold, and that's okay. You just take the time that you need.
Yeah, fostering it's a whole family affair, right? Like, and we want to check in with our biological kids, our adopted kids. We want to make sure that every voice is heard in it. It's not just something that, the parents are signing up for. You're signing up your whole family, and that's scary. So yeah, we take breaks, we make changes, we, shake things up. Like some kids need a little bit more extra care during certain times, and we just accommodate. And I think one thing that we've tried with our biological children is introducing them when the workers are there. The workers come to see the child and care, but if my oldest walks through, this is my son Kason, and I introduce them, and I think it just makes them feel like a valued part and of the
process
and the process, right? Yeah.
And sometimes you'll say you're going to take a break and then you might get a phone call, right? And it's okay to reevaluate because we do that a lot. But then like you guys said, we sit our family down and say, hey, this is the situation. This is the age. This is what we know. How are you guys thinking? What are you guys feeling right now? And kind of see if it's best for the family. And oftentimes it's yes, but sometimes it's a no. And that's okay. It's okay to say no.
We got a call last night for a 4-year-old. And what's crazy is, I was like, I think maybe we could say yes, But then they said it was respite. It was only for 4 days. And I was like, oh, I can't do 4 days. I can do a year, but I don't know if I can. I'm like, what is that? It's easier as foster parents sometimes to wrap your head around longer than it is short. Cause I'm like, if I'm going to shake things up, we got to do it for a long time.
Mhm.
It's funny how those things happen, huh? Okay, another question. How often do you use respite while you have a child placed with you? Or what does respite care look like for you and you using it?
I didn't use it often. I used it when my grandmother was passing away. And then I think I used it maybe about 3 times in the whole time I fostered. My life kind of revolved around my boys anyway, so it was more like if it was really a significant need for them to be away overnight, and that's the only reason that I probably would have used it.
Well, our family, we used every other Friday night because I have boys that play football. And I just set up somebody to the same respite person to keep our younger ones that are foster kids because I'm a football mom. And that was something important to me to still get to cheer loud and to be focused and not to worry if I have somebody running to the concession stands, where are they? So every other Friday night, my caseworker knows that's the deal for me. I'm either they've got to be big enough to go to the concession stands or small enough to do an okay with respite every Friday night, every other Friday night for home games. So you got to make it work for what works for your family.
Right. We're a little bit of both. We don't use it often, but when we do, we try to use the same providers. We try to do do the same for that family. Just give them more people in their corner to support them and love them. So it's case by case.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I'll be honest, we didn't use it for many years because we tried it one time and the respite provider just spoiled the kid beyond being, and they came back and it was really hard transition back. And we're like, that was more work than it was good for us. Right. But we've grown over time and we've learned how to use it and how to really, like Lacey said, we find the same families. Sometimes we even find natural supports, which here in Colorado, they'll allow you to have natural supports if they are willing to get their fingerprints and their background check done. They can go to their home. So we have an adult son that lives in the area. He has taken our current foster placement before. He actually, we traveled back to North Dakota for a family reunion, and we would have taken our foster son, but he doesn't do well in big groups, and we were having a family reunion. It just was not the best setting for him. And so he stayed back and stayed with my son instead. And so there are times, and we are therapeutic, and with therapeutic care in Colorado, it is mandatory that you have respite at least once a month. And that was hard for us at first, like, oh,
That's
we're not
amazing.
used to this, but it really does, especially when you have those higher level kids. It does give the break. But of course, you don't say it that way to the kid. You make it fun. We have them meet the person ahead of time if they don't already know them, and just kind of make it a natural thing, and never say something like, oh, we need a break, or you need a break. It's more, you just find ways of making it like, oh, this person wants to come have a fun weekend with you, and you're going to do this and this. And again, that introduction, or that the people you already know, really does make it a natural thing. And also, it's okay as a foster parent to say, hey, this is what works and doesn't work for this kiddo. Giving them a list. This is their bedtime. This is what we allow for screen time. And can you please keep these things the same over the weekend or the week, because it really will help us all in the long haul. Let's see what other questions we got here. Could you touch on emergency foster care? What does that look like? What is emergency care?
Emergency care. We just did this a few months ago. So emergency care is really, maybe there was an actual emergency call where the police were involved and they got the child at 1 a.m. and you get a call and you're willing to be in emergency placement, meaning you're okay with DFACS calling you at 1:30 and bringing a child over that late. Because in a lot of situations is they know that the kids are coming into care, they've got hours to go over there and get the child, but it's a little more planned out where they are at the DFAC's office is open, all of that, but not with emergency placements. Like something bad happened and they need the child immediately to come in, whether it's 1:30. And I recently we recently did that, and a little guy came to us at 1:30, and the only mistake I made is I didn't tell my husband. I didn't wake him up because it was he was sleeping, and they met in the living room before I got up. So that's kind of stuff like that happens, which is really funny because I jump up because I hear them talking and ran out there and introduced him, and then I was like, but it was emergency. But we are an emergency placement home. So so that's all it really means. And usually those are temporary because DFACS hasn't even had a chance to call aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. And a lot of times there is a home for them that's even already in their family, but they still have to pass a few, just clearances to get to go there. So a lot of times emergency placements are just there for 2 or 3 days.
And again, every state does it differently. Here in
Yeah.
Colorado, we call it on call. So they have somebody on call at all times, a foster home on call. We are the on-call family
Okay.
for this month. So we're on call for those emergencies that happen in the middle of the night or when people are off work. They call us. We have to let them know if we're going to go on vacation or anything where our house can't be on call because then they need another family to be on call. But yeah, it is that short term or until they can find, if they do become long-term, then they, move them into a long-term foster home. So.
Is that your agency's rule or just like statewide?
That we are licensed through our county, and so we
Okay.
don't do statewide licensing in Colorado. Again, some states are just different. It's county by county, so every county kind of runs it differently. But here, that's how our county does it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Another question. What would you say to somebody they are all in, they are ready to foster, but their spouse or partner may not be there yet?
Don't do it.
Wait.
Don't do it at all. Until if you have a spouse or a partner or something, everybody really in the house needs to be on board. That your spouse, your children, if they're like, I would say, if they're 6 and up children, everybody has to have the understanding about what's about to happen. And if there's any objection, then you probably don't want to subject a child to any other like animosity or anything like that because they're in the home, in their space with someone who really didn't want to be a part of the situation. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And don't let it be a point of contention in your marriage. Maybe God is calling you to do something with foster care right now. And maybe right now it's going to be like just you babysitting, or maybe it's you taking a meal to a foster family and waiting for your spouse to get where you are, but also being okay if they aren't, because you really do have to both be on board. But there is such a big need for a foster care community and to be a community even for, and so maybe even just seek out ways that you can still be a part of. Maybe it's like America Kids Belong right now and volunteering with them, or inviting your spouse to come with you to volunteer, because it could be that volunteering is also what pricks a spouse's heart, but waiting until you're both on the same page, and in the meantime looking for ways you can still get involved.
What has been your biggest support? What has helped you as a foster parent?
Okay, I'm going to go back to whoever was asked the spouse question. I want to encourage you, because the biggest support was this precious person I didn't know before, who was that I met, who wanted to she wanted to foster, but her husband wasn't there. And she asked, could she come over once a week? And she has come over once a week for a year and a half. Yeah. And whenever we have a placement. And if that is not a blessing, she will play. Y'all are like, hallelujah, where do I get that? But my biggest help is that one person. who would shows up anytime we have a placement once a week to either play or give me a break, pick up toilet paper or paper plates or whatever.
I would say my biggest support, being a single parent doing it, you have to build a village around yourself just in case you need them. And my aunt, who's like the family babysitter, she's been very, very gracious, in watching the boys over the years when they were younger. I had friends who, like Andrea, they wanted to know what it was like to, foster or, have children in those circumstances. So they would volunteer to take them out to a baseball game, or, they'll show up for them with me at their, events or whatnot. And, just having friends who understand, what it takes to be in a position that I'm in and being willing to fit in where they could. I didn't go out of my way to ask for much help because I felt like everything was kind of manageable. I was on the same schedule as the kids anyway. But if there was something that I absolutely needed to do, I knew I had a list of people I can, run off. Because and not all the time people want to take in 3 kids at one time. You have to kind of, you go here, you go there, you go here. And that's fine too, because I feel at times all of us need to separate and find, miss each other a little bit, back then. So, we all come back together, and when I start really rallying up everybody and, bringing them back home. But, my friends and my family have been the biggest support in times of need. And I really appreciate that for them over the years.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add is other foster families, that they have been our biggest support. Somebody else mentioned it earlier, people I didn't even know. I didn't know any of these foster families. Then you become a foster home, and they often are the people that really do get what you're going through. And we support one another, we help one another. Or even if it's hey, they know the Williams have a new placement, they don't need to be the ones helping us, but they know what we need. And so they'll go find the people to help us, or reach out to even our friends and be like, hey, I know they need this right now, just because they get it and they know. So finding your fostering community is really important. What do you guys recommend having ready to go in a room when a child comes into your home? So when a child comes in, what's good to have in the room ready to go for them?
Oh, their bedroom? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's the question.
Okay. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Lacey.
I was just going to say, we always do kind of like a gift basket or a food basket, maybe some pictures of the home, or some, depending on the age of the kid, just some general, I don't know, introductions and things. I think I just didn't want them to come into my home and not feel like they're thirsty to get something, or what snacks are available, or where did she say this was, or is it okay to knock on their door if their door's closed, and just kind of like some just kind of general housekeeping things I have in their room. And then of course we did a lot of emergency care, so just having just extra items that they needed, and so things like that, just to try to make them as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, I always try to think of the senses, something they can taste. So something's, whether it's just something small that's sweet, or to drink, having a water bottle ready, and the sight, making sure that they have a nightlight, because they're often scared. Where are they? Their new place, turning on the lights in the hallway. That sound, having a noisemaker there, that they can or cannot turn on. You can turn it on and be like, do you want this on or do you not want it on? So I just and then something soft, thinking of the senses again, try to have a new stuffy for each kid, or a little blanket that's there ready to go. Because those are the things, that make us feel comfortable when we're in that fight or flight mode, when we're a little, scared in a moment. Think about what makes us feel comfortable. And again, like, you never know. It could be in the middle of the day, but it could be in the middle of the night. We had Andrea, same thing last week. We had a little boy come at 1:30 in the night, and it was probably one of my least favorite placements, because he was tired, and so I had to just go lay him down in bed, and he went straight to bed. And it was so weird having a kid just go straight to bed and not having any conversation or anything like that. But just being ready and prepared for those situations. And when he wakes up, what's going to be there that's going to greet him when he wakes up in the morning. Awesome. Well, thank you guys again for joining us tonight. Remember to stand by when this webinar ends for a survey that's going to pop up. We have a few last things to share with you, so give me just a little bit to get this pulled up. But again, thank you guys, those of you that are listening, that are watching, for being here. We are happy to do these webinars. We are excited about upcoming webinars, and we are so thankful for our guests that were here tonight to be able to share with you. I know you guys loved hearing from them, from Barry and Andrea and Lacey, and just a few closing thoughts here. So our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, August 13th. And it's going to be fostering permanency. We're going to be featuring Pam Willis, and we're going to learn about, like we talked about, when reunification doesn't happen, what does that look like? And Pam, who was on the verge of an empty nest, after raising 5 kids, she dove into the deep end with her husband and adopted 7 kids out of foster care. So we will hear from her as our keynote speaker, as well as some panelists like we had tonight. And help fund our mission, we get to do these webinars because people donate to America's Kids Belong. We are fully ran by donors. And so if you enjoyed this tonight, and if you want to help this cause and help us be able to do things like this more often, you can use this QR code or just share or go to americaskidsbelong.org, where you can find the donate option there as well. And again, I want to thank our guests. Barry, thank you for your fun personality, for sharing and just, again, breaking those misconceptions that you can't foster when you're single. You can. And thank you for sharing your story and giving us of your time, because we know you have a very busy schedule. And Andrea and Lacey as well, moms that are in it right now that shared all that they shared with you guys. Thank you for giving us your time. And we are going to end tonight with this little inspirational video. So please stay on, watch this video, and then at the end, a survey will pop up as we close off tonight.
Something happens to you when you don't belong. I can't explain it really. But if you felt it, you know. There are over 400,000 of us in the U.S. foster care system. 100,000 are available for adoption and are waiting for a forever family. The rest of us kids are waiting to be reunited with our birth families and just need a loving foster family while we wait. Without a family, without a place to belong, it feels like no one knows your story. No one really sees you. You feel invisible. You probably don't know how much we need you, but we do. There aren't enough families to love us, to help us heal, to call us theirs. And the truth is, bad things happen when kids don't have a place to belong. Every year, 26,000 leave foster care when they're grown up and still without a family. Half never even got to graduate from high school. Others end up homeless, in trouble with the law, trafficked. It's a big problem. But the solution is so easy, even us kids know it. The solution is you. So it's time you met us, time you really got to know us. You'll see, we are brave, we are beautiful, we are worthy of belonging. The solution is you. Will you see our faces? Will you tell our stories? Will you help us belong?
We do hope that you make the decision, or make the decision to do the next thing that's best for your family. We hope that you were inspired tonight. We hope that you got questions answered. Stay on as we close off for that survey and look for a follow-up email. Thanks again for joining us.